Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, TianWei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered his New Year address outlining his expectations for 2018. How will China build on the domestic reforms and international cooperation of the previous year? I speak with Yuan Yuan Tan, widely considered the greatest Chinese ballerina ever of all times. I find out the steps it took to become a principal dancer and ballet queen. Chinese President Xi Jinping has delivered his New Year's message to the nation, extending greetings to all Chinese people and best wishes to friends all over the world. He also outlined his expectations for the new year. During his speech, President Xi said that 2017 was an extraordinary year for China as it achieved progress in every aspect.
Future starts now. Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered his New Year address on Sunday, vowing to press ahead with reforms in 2018.
2018年是全面贯彻中共十大精神的开局之年。
2018 is the start of the comprehensive implementation of the spirit of the 19th CPC National Congress. The Congress drew up the beautiful blueprint of our development for the next 3 decades.
With an increasing important role on the world stage, China will make contributions to world peace and development.
中国坚定维护联合国权威和地位。
China will staunchly safeguard the authority and status of the UN and actively fulfill its due responsibility and duty in international affairs. China will honor its promises in countering global climate change and actively push forward the common construction of the Belt and Road. China will act as a builder of world peace and a contributor to global development and an upholder of the international order.
A little different from other warm New Year's greetings, DPRK leader Kim Jong-un's bold words once again put the spotlight on Pyongyang's nuclear threats and soaring tensions on the Korean Peninsula.
This year, we should focus on mass-producing nuclear warheads and ballistic missiles for operational deployment. At the same time, the strategic system has been established.
Through 2017, the DPRK launched 17 missiles, each one more powerful than the last. On November 29th, the launch of the Hwasong-15 intercontinental ballistic missile was a breakthrough for Pyongyang that put the entire U.S. mainland within range, and U.S. patience is fading fast.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
From the possibility of peace to more nuclear activity still leaves a big question mark on what the future holds for the Korean Peninsula in 2018.
So the New Year's speech coming from the Chinese president, he talked about both sides, both international relations for China and also its domestic agenda. What does that mean for the rest of the world? Let's join our panelist, Wang Yiwei, the director of the Institute of International Affairs at Renmin University, joining us for this edition of our program. Welcome, sir. Also, we'd like to welcome Alexander Lukin, professor and director of the East Asian and SCO Studies Center at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. Welcome to Beijing.
Thank you very much.
And joining us in London, in the UK, we invited John Ross, Senior Fellow at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. I want to welcome the three of you, gentlemen. Happy New Year. And I should start from you, Professor Wang, here in Beijing. About China's role internationally. President Xi Jinping talked about holding high, is a supporter of the UN system, is actually going to implement very well the commitment to the climate change by the Paris Accord, and it's going to continue with its Belt and Road Initiative. Anything new here? What kind of message should we get?
Well, China definitely is one of the major supporters of the United Nations system, a multilateral system. Given that some countries like the United States withdraw some Paris Accord, and also the more and more focus on the American first and then unilaterally. So I think that's very unique for the United Nations system, and also for the United Nations peace and development. China sent more peacekeepers in P5 and also contribute a lot to the world development. Since the opening of the global financial crisis, China's economic growth contribute to 1/3 of all the economic growth. So this definitely.
So this is going to be a continuity in a way in terms of China's role.
Next year, China will contribute more and more, like host of the SCO summit, and also we have the Shanghai International Import Expo.
Right. So what does that mean, Professor Lukin? China is said it's going to be an ardent supporter of the UN system, while the United States seems to withdraw already from UNESCO, and also its budget and commitment to the other UN systems and agendas have been reducing. What does it say? Are we going to see some competitions or very different interpretation about the world?
Well, I think at the moment China is one of the strongest supporters in the world of the UN system, and this is very clear because it's good for China. It's in its interests. China, well, in the United Nations, for example, in the Security Council, the majority, well, among the permanent members, let's say, of the Security Council, the majority of the Western countries, and the United States is the strongest country there. But China, like Russia, they have the right to stop any decision there, and that's why it's in their interest to maintain this system. From that point of view, it's the United States, which is the revolutionary force in the current international affairs system. And China is a stabilizing force, I would say.
Stabilizing force. Will China really play that role? For example, about the issue of the DPRK, Korean Peninsula nuclear issue today, Professor Wang, we heard New Year speeches coming from different sides. One is coming from the DPRK, suggesting to the United States that the nuclear weapon button is on the table of the President Kim. However, he also delivered a conciliatory message to his South Korean counterpart, saying that North Korea is thinking of sending a delegation to the Winter Olympic Games coming February, and it is going to be a great opportunity to showcase so-called Korean status to the world. How do you read these mixed messages? What role will China play in that regard?
Firstly, I think the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-il, want to say that the nuclear deterrence use. So they want to, they not want to use this. The U.S. is a threat. U.S. ROK alliance is a threat. Then secondly, he want to negotiate. I think resume to maybe to the negotiating table by sending the delegation to to the South Koreans Olympic Games. I think that's a very good signal to for the South and North relations.
I'm not sure whether they're really sending a delegation for negotiations, but they're sending a delegation at least for the Winter Olympic Games. We do not know whether that is likely to happen. Having said that, though, Mr. Lukin, the U.S. president was being asked by journalists about his reactions to the North Korean president's remarks. He said, "We'll see," quote, end of quote. How do you, as a scholar from Russia, who has been quite intensively looking at the situation over the decades, see this remark and also the role of China and Russia possibly?
Well, China and Russia both do not want a nuclear Korean Peninsula, and they do everything they can to avoid this.
How do you interpret President Trump's remarks saying, "We'll see"?
Well, the position of the United States is strange from all points of view, to say the least. Because President Trump, since he came to power, he says that he was going to attack or to do something very decisive against North Korea, but he actually cannot do it. Everyone knows that he cannot deliver a strike against North Korea because the cost will be too high. So it's not really clear to me why one should obviously bluff in foreign policy. I mean, you can bluff in foreign policy, but if the bluff is so obvious, why do you do that? I think this kind of diminishes the influence of the United States, of the word of the United States in the world. But that's, of course, for him to decide.
People are looking at two issues, China and the United States, and also for the international agenda. One is the DPRK nuclear issue for this year, 2018, because very likely the DPRK is going to reach some stage when it comes with development of the weaponry system, Mr. Ross. And also, it is the trade issue as well. People are expecting maybe some conflict already at the very beginning of the year. So what do you think about the role that China is playing, Mr. Ross, and also the Chinese president's remarks for his New Year address?
Well, I thought that President Xi's remarks were very well judged. I mean, the reality of the situation is that China is the most important locomotive of the world economy, and has been in particular since the international financial crisis in 2008. The projects in which it's involved, not merely China, but for One Belt, One Road, and also incidentally in the South China Sea with Indonesia and some other countries, account for a far greater proportion of world economic growth than does the United States. But on the other hand, China gains from this cooperation. So the idea which President Xi put forward of a common future for humanity it's not merely nice and warm words, but it corresponds to the interest both of China and the other countries. Whereas what is put as America first, which seems to be America alone, is not in the interest of the rest of the world. It's not in the interest of the United States people either. I mean, if there's going to be a trade war with China, well, the price of products for the American people are going to go up considerably. Because they're going to be blocking the prices of very competitive imports which come in from China. That's why, incidentally, there's considerable opposition inside the United States to serious sanctions against it. So President Xi is putting forward what might be called win-win, and President Trump, unfortunately, on trade, seems to be playing with, although he hasn't actually done yet, he's talking about, we'll have to judge actions. Some people are putting forward a lose-lose.
But the thing is, how can China bring others with China to develop further and look into the situation of 2018? Belt and Road Initiative is something, Professor Wang, you've been studying a lot. So will China have the money, the energy, the power, and the capacity of bring everybody else with it along the road of Belt and Road Initiative, let's just say?
Well, it's China not to. China should just have this initiative, not China do by himself, because the infrastructure building for the in Asia and for the world is cost billions of the even trillions of the U.S. dollars. So I think the international financial system, financial market can provide some like the hot money. They also have trillions of U.S. dollars. So how can convert the hot money to the cold money, focus on the infrastructure building, real economy? That's a challenge for China because RMB in the capital level is not inconvertible, not yet. So I think the West participant in the Belt and Road Initiative is very important.
Will 2018 really make a sea difference when it comes to China's effort of pushing forward the Belt and Road Initiative and let everybody else to work with it? I mean, the idea, Mr. Lukin, Russia has this Eurasian corridor initiative as well. So how countries, whether part of the Eurasian corridor already, react to all of this?
Well, not only Russia, but Eurasian Economic Union, of which Russia is a member. It's a union of five countries of post-Soviet space, let's say. We signed an agreement with China on cooperation or linkage with Belt and Road Initiative, so we cooperate very well on that, and fully support Chinese initiative. You know that President Putin came here. Actually, President Xi mentioned that among the greatest events of this year was that meeting of Belt and Road Summit. And President Putin came to that summit and delivered a speech there. So this is a sign of full support of this initiative, and we are going to work, I'm sure, in Russia to cooperate with China, because we also need Chinese investment, Chinese cooperation to build our infrastructure in Russia. That's very important for us.
All right. It's not just the international agenda, but also domestically, how is it going to work in the year 2018? It's been 4 decades, in fact, to the year since China opened to the rest of the world and relentlessly pursued the reform. Chinese President Xi Jinping minced no words in emphasizing just how important these two are in shaping the nation's future.
2018年，我们将迎来改革开放40周年。
2018 marks the 40th anniversary of China's reform and opening up policy. The policy is the only way for modern China to make progress in its development, as well as to realize the Chinese dream. With the 40th anniversary of the reform and opening up policy as a turning point, we shall cut paths through mountains and build bridges across rivers, overcome all difficulties and carry reform through to the end.
So you can see the Chinese president talking about reform and opening up. Some have been wondering, when China's economy already reached this stage, when China is having a very grand international strategy, will China's reform and opening up still continue? I think Chinese president did answer that question very well this time in the New Year's speech. And he talked about the challenges of reform and opening up. And he said that's exactly what we need to do. Professor Wang, the speed of reform and opening up, some say, today cannot be compared to when they just began. And people wonder, will this speed be able to solve the challenge that are facing us?
We say this is the new era. The open reform entered the new era. That means the first era is the more integrated with the international community. China joined WTO, joined many international organizations. And now the open reform is I think to adapt to the new reality, new dynamic of the world. So it's a mutual adaptation between China and the world. So it's not just a one-dimensional China integrated with the world. Open reform is want to increase China's comparative advantage. So it's for every country, I think they also need open reform.
Professor Ross, your thoughts? Opening up and reform. China's been doing that for 4 decades. New era. What is the next important stage?
Well, the most crucial thing is that China is making a transition from what it calls moderate prosperity, but I'll use international criteria. That is the World Bank's definition of a high-income economy, which China will hit in about 2021, 2022 at the present growth rate. This is a total transformation of the situation in the world. Only 16.5% of the world's population lives in high-income economies at the present time, and China by itself is more than 18% of the world's population. So China achieving this status is going to more than double the number of people in the world living in high-income economies. And all the things that flow from that are the things which President Xi was addressing. That is, the demands of the people and the needs and the possibilities of the Chinese people are going to enormously increase. One of the greatest tasks that was set by the reform and opening up was to get hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Well, that job still remains to be completely finished by 2020. We're still looking at around 30 million people who've got to be taken out of poverty. But fundamentally, the problem of conquering extreme poverty has been dealt with. Now people are looking at vastly greater social needs, cultural needs, entertainment needs, foreign travel, all the things that go with our high-income economies that are highly desirable. This is a very complex situation for China to navigate through, as President Xi has stressed, and that's what the 19th Congress addressed. But it's going to be a total transformation of the world. Can you imagine this? The number of people in the world in high-income economies will more than double when China achieves that status. This is an extraordinary global fact.
It is going to be an extraordinary moment, but of course, come with it will also be needs for changes to the international system as well. We want to thank the 3 of you, gentlemen, for being with us on the very first day of 2018. Happy New Year to you once again. Wang Yiwei, Alexander Lukin, John Ross, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Thank
you.
You're watching World Insight with me, TianWei. Still to come on our program, I speak with Yuan Yuan Tan, widely considered as one of the best ballerinas of the world. I find out how a coin toss by the parents actually changed her life trajectory. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with me, TianWei, on CGTN. Born in Shanghai, admitted to Shanghai Ballet Dance School at the age of 11, her ballet performance is legendary in the ballet world. She is the only Asian chief executive of the San Francisco Ballet and one of its prominent lead actors in the dance troupe. She was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the American Dance magazine and was honored as the Asian hero on the cover of the Times at the age of 26. Her name is Yuan Yuan Tan. She is one of the best ballerinas of the world. We had an interview with her, but take a look at this first.
A legend of the ballet world. From a talented girl to a ballet queen, Tan Yuan Yuan spent decades earning international awards and made the world behold this exquisite oriental face. At the age of 11, Tan Yuan Yuan was admitted to the Shanghai Ballet Dance School. While her father disapproved of her choice, her mother encouraged her to pursue her talent. So, they tossed a coin to decide her fate. The result was yes. But Tan began to learn dancing nearly a year later than her peers. This prompted self-doubt to the point she thought she was an ugly duckling. The ugly duckling eventually became a white swan. Through her hard work, at the age of 14, Tan won the first international prize in Finland, and 1 year later, she won the gold medal at the 5th International Ballet Competition in Paris. When most 18-year-old girls are still unaware of their true calling, Tan Yuan Yuan, who studied at the Ballet Academy of Dance in Stuttgart, Germany, had already received the signing invitation from the San Francisco Ballet. In only 3 years, Tan Yuan Yuan jumped from the solo dancer to the principal dancer. For nearly 30 years, she used her youth to perform almost all of the classic ballets. She is a well-deserved ballet queen. Even though she is 40 years old, she is still 100% full of passion on stage. She is not only a dancer, but also an international artist who made contributions to cultural exchange and exposed the world to Chinese ballet.
20 years on the stage. For anyone doing anything for 20 years, it's respectful, not to mention ballet dancing.
At the beginning, I don't think it's possible because usually we, as a ballet dancer, due to the injuries and then workload, we have a lot of unexpected things happen in life as well. So sometimes we retire at the age of 30, 35. I extend my career by pretty far as a dancer.
Is it possible still to challenge always yourself?
For me, sometimes it's very tiring and I want to get some rest or just doing a little bit less. But somehow when I showed up in the studio and I start practice and I can't go backwards, I have to just go forward.
All the way?
All the way. And on stage I put 120, not 100. Sometimes I just felt, why are you doing this to yourself?
Exactly.
But it just happens naturally. Even though I want to hold back to do a little bit less, then it's impossible for me to do so because I really get used to the intensity and 120 for over 22 years.
I remember in an interview you were saying, well, it's been 20 years. I feel so lucky that my body is still responding to me.
On a daily basis, at the beginning, when I wake up, I just check where it feel pain, and then sometimes it got like a very stiff joint and a sore neck, sore muscles.
What do you do with this?
Well, I just go to the studio and warm up, take a very hot shower to let the muscle relax a little bit, and I do some kind of exercise to warm up the muscles and the joint. And but you sometimes have to dance through the pain. When you're young, recovery time is shorter. But when you're getting older and then have more intensive workload, then you probably recover much slower than when you're young.
So actually, it's always a mixture of both pleasure. It's something that you really like, you really enjoy, and you shine in it, and also pain at the same time. Always a mixture.
It's always a mixture, and it's beautiful suffering.
The competition, just to think about it, on the ballet stage is fearful. You've been there 22 years. Every year there are new dancers, very talented, very physically challenging, could be on the stage. And every time they could be coming with an extra portion of different cultures. So how do you look at that situation? And at the same time, how do you grow all the way, even though you are extremely successful already?
When I was young, I faced the same thing.
And you're still young, my dear. Let me tell you about this.
Well, yeah. When I'm younger, when I first time joined the company, I was the youngest soloist of the company, San Francisco Ballet Company history.
How old were you then?
I was 17. And 17 and a half. And I got promoted when I was 19, become the youngest Chinese ballerina ever happened, like in the history of ballet world, is the youngest principal.
Indeed.
Yes. So that load of jealousy is amazing. I was there without speak any English, and I had to face that. So at the beginning, I was very upset, and I was like, why they treat me like this? And then I realized this is like the real world. It's not
part of the game.
The part of the game. If you're good, but just believe yourself. And then I called my parents, and I was like, oh my God, I want to come back because this is really difficult for me to be here.
At the time, your parents were in Shanghai?
Yeah, it was
still in Shanghai.
In Shanghai, yeah. But my mom told me just like do the best that you can, and then everything else will be solved. So I did it. What she said, it works. So I just like really just home and the studio, stage, back home. So that's my routine. And then that's for 5 years. I don't really have a lot of friends, especially in the company, but I think they noticed my talent, and also, of course, the director gave me a lot of opportunities. So I conquered every single one.
I showed it to them.
And showed on stage. That's the most, in Chinese say, 牛, right?
Yeah.
It's the most, it worked out. So I believe in my ability. And with all the competition, and I see I've been through, and I see now all the young dancers wanted to become a star. It will take time, but when on this very rocky road, you have to be mentally strong.
Right.
You do have to not just like few performances, but all the way from the studio. Even when you change your clothes, in the dressing room, you have the mindset, okay, this is a new start. It's kind of like meditation at the beginning. So like, okay, I changed this outfit. I am a ballerina now, and I needed to work the best that I can. Every single step, every single minute, make it very important.
How did you manage to find your style? You know, I'm sure through a lot of hard work, people get better technically. But the style thing and the spirit of a dance artist is very hard to find. How did you, when was the moment for you to realize, that's probably it?
I think the first feelings when I was 15 in Finland, Helsinki competition. At that time, I was only 15, and that was the first experience that I was traveling abroad, like foreign country, and see a lot of foreign dancers. And I was like, wow, ballet can be like this. Because when I was in the school, I was very shallow, just to do what the teacher told me to do.
Only the classics, right?
Only the classics. A little bit of contemporary, but I wouldn't say it's contemporary, just like not wearing tutus.
I see.
So it's not like a really like use your body to tell the story. I'm just like a copycat to copy what is right. I think is the right thing to do, or the teacher thinks is the right thing for me to do. So I don't have a personality when I'm dancing. Then I saw a lot of dancers are older than me, and then I was like, wow, there's something really interesting. Why I cannot do this? Why, what they are thinking when they're dancing? So I was just like very curious about it. Then I won the silver medal at the first competition. I was 15. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. But when I was doing the performance, I already finished the competition, just a performance. Then I relaxed. I was like, oh, maybe I can just like do a little bit softer here and there and just listen to the music. That moment, I think, opened my mind.
After that, here we go.
Like yeah. After that, I just like really still training with the teacher and in the school. Then I think really opened my eyes is when I was in Germany studying, and I was in San Francisco, because I see a lot of things, like different things that I did not learn in the school.
So seeing it, going there, experience it, does help tremendously.
Oh, I have to say, if I didn't do that, I won't be dancing like that way.
And you were saying earlier in another interview that when you are doing your characters on the stage, you know that you have become them, but you are not imitating them. How is that possible? I mean, as we women grow, we seem to be much more enriched by our lives and experiences. And I guess for dance artists like you, it's particularly true. So how did that happen? Can you help us to understand
Put yourself into this role and then just think how this character are thinking. For example, I did this like amazing piece called The Little Mermaid. Hans Christian himself is the mermaid because he has so much pain in him, and that's why he wrote in the book saying that her voice is taken away, because that's what she have now is the human leg instead of a beautiful tail. So she cannot speak. It's like a lot of things that Hans Christian Andersen cannot tell the world, that he's gay, that he's in love with the young master. So that's why he wrote this story that Little Mermaid is him. So what if I'm him in Little Mermaid? How I feel, like the pain you cannot express, but the pain is in here. So what your body language should do. It's not like this is happy, and you have to be like really tight, and then it's not angry but suffering. So in this way that your body language completely changed, and then ballet cannot talk, so that's only it's our tool, and it's a very powerful tool.
Exactly.
To tell the story with the music itself.
I wish Hans Christian Andersen got the chance to be able to see your performance. I'm sure he will be dazzled. The other hand, Giselle.
Yeah.
Very dramatic story.
Very dramatic.
and personality goes ups and down with the story.
Well, I have to say Giselle also one of my favorites.
It's a lot of work.
Yes, one of my favorite role. It's not only because technically it's very difficult. You have to be precisely with difficult variations, solos, and then part of this. But for me, to create Giselle, every year when I get older, it's more interesting because...
Tell me about it.
It's not so difficult to become innocent like a country girl, right? But the difficulty is transition when she find out that she got cheated from the Prince Albert, and then she get mad. And she already have very heart condition, like in the beginning. But how she felt it, and she felt betrayed, and how angry she is, and how upset she is, and then triggers the madness, and then there's a scene, it's mad scene. It's very interesting, because you only have this certain music, only very little time to express her pain, and then, how to say, this is like end of the world.
That's right.
For a young girl, and how she is really heartbroken, but at the end, she still reach out to him because she still loves him deeply. And
that transformation, stage by stage.
Yes, yes. So it's very detailed, but you have to really do a lot of behind-the-scenes like work on your own, and then to be in the studio alone, to know a little, even to get to the details of little fingers, how your hands gesture. Like if you cover your mouth like this, it's not like so. You have to cover the mouth a little bit, like you can see that it's a little bit of things that make a huge difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Were you always in the studio thinking about those details by yourself?
Yeah. I feel more comfortable instead of people telling me to do so. Or the coach can be like working, I was like, oh, this is nice, but maybe if you do a little bit of this, it will look better. So I will take the advice and then work on that. I was like, okay, this will work. Or every time I doing things slightly different.
Right.
So that's why my Giselle, like I think 2 years ago in the National Performing Arts Center, that was,
it was
a
huge success.
I think it was magical. I have to say that probably my best Giselle ever. That day I was just open myself and just let things happen. I felt I'm really light as a feather, and there's no weight on my shoes. I just like flying across stage. So I think this feelings you really can't happen all the time. If there's once, and that's already a miracle. And I'm very glad that the miracle happened here in Beijing.
It's already a blessing, isn't it? And still today, people are talking about that performance, Yuan Yuan.
Really?
Yes,
really? Oh.
They are. And they were remembering very well the 20th anniversary, both of the San Francisco Ballet and also your performance in China. People here are just extremely proud of this Chinese ballerina called Yuan Yuan, who eventually becomes such a world-renowned, dance artist. But there are many other Chinese girls that are learning ballet or try to be on the international stage in different art forms. Do you have some advice for them? I mean, your days are much more difficult because you've never seen the outside world. But of course, today's China is different. But I guess there's something that has to be consistent and would be helpful to them.
I feel I was not really polluted by outside the world. I'm kind of like I kind of just like be myself. I'm very happy just stay home doing like watch movie, relax my body, and the next day think about what I should work on for the programs and then steps. And for a dancer, you have to take care of yourself. You cannot go out clubbing party too much because it will affect your performance or your training. Be on the top. As a dancer or artist, you're like a monk.
Life is short, as they always say. Particularly when you are extremely good in your profession. But at the same time, be able to relax yourself, to make it open. It's another thing. So that's a balance that I was thinking about every day, but I guess for you will be even more.
Yes, yes. You're absolutely right, what you said. And then also the earlier you talk about the competition. Yeah, I mean, because we're always in this intensive art form.
Absolutely.
And with the age, we grow in age, and then the body probably not recover as fast and not as can be too active as before. But what you can do is you don't compete with don't compete with the others. They're individual, they're different. And what you can compete is yourself.
Absolutely, 100%. Such a pleasure, Yuan Yuan,
Thank
to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so
honor.
much. All the
Thank
best,
you.
my dear.
Thank you very much.
Yuan Yuan Tan, one of the best ballerinas of the world, and certainly a very well-known international artist originally coming from China. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, TianWei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Happy New Year, everyone.